All right, welcome back to Inside Prediction Markets. We're starting with the three big stories in prediction markets this week. Number one for me, I don't have any numbers on this, any hard numbers. I'm just seeing some charts. World Cup volumes, holy moly. I mean, just everything is completely ripping. Kalshi, Poly, Novig, everybody is just spiking, highest of highs ever. Great for volume, great for operators in the short term. Doesn't really sell the story that PMs are more than sports, but who can complain?
Yeah. And I saw a great tweet from our friend Golden Pants rooting for a tie. And I think every market maker saw that. It was like, yep, I'm rooting for a tie. Every single World Cup game, you need a tie. And then you need the underdog. If you don't get a tie, you want the underdog to win. And the favorite winning, always bad. If you want the favorite to win, you're probably a bad market maker.
We're in the middle of Spain, Cape Verde right now, which as of the 45
0-0?
mark, still 0-0. How many?
0-0.
Ended 0-0.
That's huge.
I think we can retire if that's it. We've at least dug out of the Knicks hole partially.
Oh, yeah.
The Knicks.
That dovetails into another thing we wanted to talk about.
All right, story number two.
Yeah, which is Knicks Spurs. The SIG,
Jeff Yass, right? They lost $22 million on the.
No. That's how much rec volume
Okay,
was
yeah.
created. Like, they said that was their biggest loss, which you have to imagine was mid-7 or low 8-figure.
Easily.
Yeah, in losses. And
I think you and I were both introduced to the phrase, I lost a phone book on that one this
Yes.
week. Yeah. I've said that to like 10 people since, pretending that I've always said it.
great line.
Yeah,
like,
really good.
How baller can you be to be like, I lost a phone book this week. But yeah, similar to every market maker wanting a tie in the World Cup, every market maker was backing the Spurs. And the Knicks really did an excellent job of fucking over the market makers by intentionally going down early on to ensure that
Knicks 50-1 was like the most common ticket in the world.
Yeah, so like all the recreational flow got one way on the Knicks. You couldn't even get a Spurs bet if your life depended on it, and of course the Knicks win as usual.
I think it was actually De'Aaron Fox placing all those bets on the Knicks. I think. But, he didn't have time to place it from the bench because they kept leaving him in the goddamn game. So there goes that conspiracy theory. All right, and story number 3.
Yeah, so I just saw like an hour or two ago, I believe it was Morgan Stanley or one of the banks, I forget.
One of these banks,
We'll find the tweet, said that Kalshi did 10% of global sports volume.
Wow. Wait, global or U.S.?
Oh, good question.
Probably U.S.
Probably
U.S., but 10% of the total OSB. Yeah.
That seems very high to me.
The trajectory is crazy.
I'm not denying that they're doing a good percent, but 10% seems very high. I would like to know the process of what they got that, and then also I guess if it's OSB and we're not counting PPH and offshores, okay, fine, that makes sense. But if it's global and they're counting PPH, I don't see how they're getting anywhere close to 10%, which also shows really how big it can go, considering, Kalshi's getting 50 to 60 million on like these NBA playoff games. They're getting like 15 to 20 million pre and another double that live on these World Cup games. It's incredible. The volume is insane everywhere.
All right, up next we have an absolutely elite guest in the Optic Odds Hot Seat, Matt Restivo.
The CEO of Optic.
Right now, in the Optic Odds Hot Seat, what could be more appropriate than Mr. Optic Odds himself, the CEO of the company, Matt Restivo.
Thanks for having me.
Matt, thanks for being here.
Yes.
We've been sponsored by Optic Odds for a few months now, but
We'll see if we keep the sponsorship after this segment.
I think we're going to hold it together. So we were just talking before we even started the show about how you got involved with the company. You were not a founder of. It was originally OddsJam, right? OddsJam was the first business.
Yeah.
Can you talk about how you came to be part of OddsJam and who did start it and what were the early days like?
Yeah, so it was founded by a couple of guys who came out of a Stanford dorm room named Ankit and Alex.
Alex Monahan, of course, a legend
in the space.
He's a true OG. I love Alex.
He creates some of the best content and has helped I mean, tens of thousands of people from being moronic bettors to actually smart bettors.
Yeah.
My
Is that
start
fair?
was OddsJam. So
Was it?
yes, I remember when it was first starting. Alex gave me a call. I was like, I was one of the newer customers. He just like explained how it works, and I was like, this is so helpful. I really appreciated it. Without him and OddsJam, I wouldn't be here today.
I remember talking to him privately in the beginning of Novig, and he talks in private like he does in public. He was like, "Oh, this shit is awesome." He was just like so fired up, just in a DM. I was like, "Okay, this is really him."
Alex is there is no exactly. His public persona is the same as his personal persona, private persona, whenever you meet him in person. Alex deserves a ton of credit for the early kind of development of the consumer product and even just educating people as to how to be sharper bettors. I think the real interesting piece was the engine that we had to build to support the consumer product. So the ability to ingest tens of thousands of markets at a low latency and normalize them, at a sub 1 second latency was really a magical component that came out of this. It's a bit like Amazon and AWS, right? It was like Amazon built this entire web infrastructure to support their own products, and then they realized, oh, actually everybody else wants this as well. And so when we started getting the doors banged down for market makers, and that obviously came later with sports books, and people were interested in the data infrastructure. And so back to your question, we started the company OddsJam started in 2021 or April of 2021. And does that sound right?
Yeah.
And then I was joined as an advisor in late 2021. Ankit chased me down. He was very persuasive to get involved in the business. And then eventually it was scaling aggressively in 2022, having a ton of success educating consumers. And Ankit actually called me. I was driving a U-Haul at the time. We were moving from New York to Colorado. And he said, we're thinking about two different things. We're thinking about making a handicapper marketplace, or should we go all in on B2B and data? And I was like, well, it's B2B. It's no question.
Yeah.
Don Best was the only product at the time.
Thinking about being like another dub club, or
Exactly. We're thinking about WAP and Dub Club.
Oh, no.
And boy, am I thankful we took that path.
Yeah.
I didn't have a lot of say at the time. As an advisor, you don't get real say, but you do get those phone calls. And so
These are
June
tough
of
decisions,
2022.
by the way. Stuff like this comes up all the time where you're building a company.
Pivots.
And you don't have enough time to sit there. You just got to vibe check it really fast.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it's like everything. It's this one decision. Yeah.
Totally. And so it's a good testament as to why, if you are out there building products, you just got to have good people around the table.
Yeah, you do.
Ankit was able to pull in this guy, Benji Cherniak, who's a legend in the space. And he built the original Dom Best and sold it to Scientific Games in 2017. I think 2017 is the timeline. But yeah, so that was the first, I think, OddsJam big pivot. They hired a guy named Ryan Weinstock, who still works for us today. He's incredible. Ryan's amazing.
Ryan's like a B2B Alex Monahan.
Yes.
Totally.
A total beast.
What a culture fit that guy is.
100%.
Love him.
100%. I think he got the email on like a Friday night and was hired like on Monday morning
Yeah.
of like a holiday weekend.
I told him we do a podcast about prediction markets, and the next words out of his mouth were, I want to sponsor your podcast. Like, no follow-up questions. Great.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
gets it.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's the total Alex Monahan. So we started creating the B2B business in 2022. I joined full-time in early 2023. And then one of the first things we were doing is, as we're selling and going out there, it's just kind of a hilarious moment when you're like OddsJam and you know exactly what that personality and persona looks like, even on the website. Yeah. And you're out there saying, hey, by the way, do you want to buy this data? Hey, DraftKings, you want to buy this data from our business, OddsJam? We're the company that's saying beat the books and it's unfair and F the books.
You
and all
hate
this
our
stuff.
customers,
Yeah,
but you're
you
gonna
hate
love
our
us.
customers, but trust me, it's going to look great. So in the middle of the year, we kind of talked through and implemented a strategy where we spun the business out. We literally created a new C Corp for Optic Odds, and we spent time deliberating the name. I'm pretty happy with Optic, but yeah, we spun it out, and now it's kind of they're two separate entities.
Are they both owned
Something
by
you're familiar with?
Yeah, right. Are they both owned by gambling.com? Were they both part of the acquisition package?
Yeah, so they're both. Yep. So there was a hold company called Odds Holdings, and they bought both.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about that acquisition? Is that something we can get into?
Yeah, absolutely. What do you want to know?
Well, I mean, first of all, the structure of the deal was interesting, right? It was
Yeah.
this $160 million acquisition, but you had to hit certain targets.
Yeah, that's right.
And just, I think your business has evolved while being part of it. Like, Like, what did you think that was going to look like, and what does it look like now?
Well, yeah. So it was the economics of the deal was effectively half up front and then half in a 2-year earnout. And so we
Half in cash or equity? Are you able to say? Or
it was a mix. It was a mix.
Publicly traded company,
Mostly
so it
cash.
doesn't
I
really
think
matter.
it's
fair.
mostly
We're
cash.
dealing
Exactly.
with some insane, you have equity in a company, but when it's a privately owned,
not
venture,
very liquid.
rocket ship, it's like a different kind of situation.
Totally,
Yeah.
totally. I think there's people out there working on that. Hopefully, we'll get more solutions for that in the future.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it was half up front, half in a 2-year earnout, and so that was 2025. I got to tell you guys, earnouts are just super intense.
Yeah.
There's nothing like the clock running against you, and you are just grinding so hard to hit your numbers. And so we actually had a great 2025 on all facets of the business. We were able to strike an agreement with the group at GAM to effectively accelerate the earnout, and so it ended up being kind of like a 1-year earnout.
Oh,
So,
nice.
yeah.
Wow.
So you guys are like, you're wrapped up.
We're wrapped up.
There we go.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. We're all wrapped up. I mean, we're wrapped up and we're still grinding. I mean, there's still, targets and stuff for us for 2026. And it's been a great year so far too.
Yeah. You said you started off selling Optic to sports books, and you kind of hinted at with prediction markets, the whole nature of the target market has changed. Can you talk about that? I think to our listeners, it's kind of self-evident, but let's get into it, right?
Yeah.
Like, how have prediction markets changed the direction of that business?
Well, it's accelerated a new customer set, right? So for us, we're talking to and selling to a lot of market makers and people who are just interested in this data engine. But prior to that, we still had a lot more customers that were not sports books, more than you would think. So I think like startups, a lot of startups come to us. We have a good startup program where you could prove to us that you're a real person and not some anon. No offense to the anons, but just somebody who's credible and really building a business. Yeah. We're happy to work with you as you scale up your business. And the second component is just like regular media companies, people who just have a need for real time, low latency data. They came to us, but now it's market makers have been a big theme for 2026.
I think most of our listeners is just market makers, and we were talking about it. It's almost gotten to the point where it's table stakes to have Optic. If you don't, you're already at a disadvantage.
Yeah, I think it's the thing people index against too, right? It's like, oh, we get this right compared to Optic, or we beat on this. It's like, okay, what? There's a whole universe of things in each product, right? And what are you actually getting out of it? How have you?
We can clip that part for us, right?
Yeah, sure. When you so you have OddsJam and Optic Odds, you guys are still actively developing OddsJam too, right?
Yeah.
How do you think about those? I wouldn't say those are at odds with each other, but they sometimes can be. Right? How do you think about balancing the dual incentives of those businesses, or even just like where we're putting our time and effort and resources?
Yeah, it's a great question. Capital allocation is a consistent question of just how do we need to allocate, which is mostly human capital. I think it circles back to where is the biggest customer opportunity, right? And so there's a very different customer for the business of OddsJam versus the customer for Optic Odds, and there's an evolving set over there.
Do you see OddsJam as a gateway product into Optic Odds, right? You get so good at
in
this
some way.
that it's like you actually need to build your own thing and you need a real pipeline.
We've talked about that a lot, and we've started to experiment with other ways to kind of test out that thesis. So we recently launched an integration into Perplexity now, where if you subscribe to Perplexity Computer, you can actually leverage Optic Odds data just inside of that natively. And so there's also an Optic Odds MCP too, so you can use it with Claude.
I was going to ask you.
Yeah. So I think we're kind of trying to figure out where that we know we have something valuable, right? We know aggregating this data and normalizing it is a really difficult task, but the delivery into who is kind of always evolving, and I think just something we have to continue to be open to changing.
Yeah. So I guess a more adversarial question here. There's been a lot of competitors, like Odds Blaze, and like on the other side, like we have Pick the Odds or Bookie Beats competing with OddsJam.
Sure.
From both fronts, like
Not to mention institutional players, Sport Radar.
Yeah.
We'll get it. That's even its own category.
Yeah,
Let's stick with newcomers.
Right. Why? What makes like Optic better than like Odds Blaze than like OddsJam better than Pick the Odds or Bookie Beats or something like that?
Well, I think there's different, to each their own to some extent.
Fair
Some people may prefer the interface of one versus another. I think that when it comes to Optic Odds and the investment that we put, we've got a multi-year head start in kind of understanding how we can aggregate sports data from 200 plus sports books across the globe at a really low latency. And so and we're continuing to deliver new features. So I think, look, the small piece of being part of a public company brings a level of transparency that's like, this company's not going anywhere. It's well capitalized. They do a lot of free cash flow versus, if you feel like buying from a person in a garage, that's your prerogative. So I think it's just like you said, people measure against us for a reason.
Fair enough.
Yeah, and you mentioned Don Best as Don Best was certainly the odd screen. Years ago.
Yeah.
And it's still a good product and does some things very well. Although I think, like you mentioned, a lot of people have left, and it's kind of living like legacy software now.
Yeah. I think it still is it's like a Windows app.
Yeah, it's well.
Yeah.
I've had some tweets about the
Are you using
security of these things. No, in part because of security concerns around some of the legacy odd screen products. Not, whatever. I don't want to get in trouble. But another big institutional player in the space, who I don't know if you would consider yourself competitors with them or not. I would. Is Sportradar.
Sure.
Sportradar, I think, is not a competitor necessarily on like the high-speed odds feed side of things. They provide odds, but it's not really the value prop with them. I don't think they would claim it's the best part of their business. But certainly in like
BetRadar is a pretty big part of their business. I think, but when you're trying to buy the whole suite.
Yeah. But I think more it's the event lifecycle stuff, just an enormous number of events and markets that are covered, and then in-play data, right? Like what is actually happening in these games.
Right.
Is that a space you feel like you'll eventually compete in? Or are you trying to get to like real-time, meaningful, structured data about these games? Or do you kind of see it like, if anything, let's keep carving this path that we know we dominate in and make room for ourselves in the industry?
Well, I think it's, when you're in a position like ours, it's natural for you to just think about what ways you can extend the business. I mean, I wouldn't commit to one way or another sort of today. What I would say is that there's a very natural, I think we feel very comfortable in the use case that we fill for most of our clients, which I would say is we help people understand the market, right? We basically make data actionable for people. And I think we're open to expanding that in any way we can.
So, as a market maker, having data faster than your competitors is very important. Do you foresee any products down the line where it's like, hey, we're selling to only a select number at an even better or lower latency, but it's obviously considerably more expensive? Do you see that opening up down the line or anything like that?
I mean, I wouldn't take that off the table either. I mean, I think no matter what, like you've got to look at kind of like the differentiators for our product and what is, like you said, what's critical for a market maker to understand, right? And that number one is, I mean, you would have to say it's speed. Then you would say it's broad and depth of coverage. And then you might say, it's like your market coverage, or can you expand in some place beyond sports? So I think all of those things are things we'll consider for sure.
So we mentioned, prediction markets are so far been a boon to your business, right? Because all of a sudden you can trade profitably, right? It's not one of the big problems with OddsJam is like you can use it liberally at the beginning, and then it gets harder and harder.
It gets harder.
Accounts. It's like, all right, what? And you can
people have been grinding that space though for like a decade, right?
Yeah.
There's people out there, they're going to golf clubs and they're meeting people and they're trying to buy accounts where somebody's just YOLO'd $500,000 into the casino, and that's very valuable, a very valuable asset for a syndicate.
Wow, what a crazy world that is.
Can you imagine making a living that way?
Sorry, not to take you off your question.
It's been great to have prediction markets come up where you're actually allowed to compete, and all of a sudden there's a reason to pay for high quality data. But one thing that I wonder if you think about is many of the prediction markets have public APIs, public WebSockets, right, where you get all this data for free. And a key feature of your business is we sell you odds data that is not easily accessible.
Sure.
But you can just subscribe to Kalshi or polymarket fees, right? So how do you think about building data products that even in that world where the exchange themselves is giving the data away for free is still a big value add, where somebody says, well, I want to build on this uniform platform rather than say, oh, I'll just pull directly from Kalshi, directly from Polymarket, resolve all the entities myself, do all the matching myself. How does that reshape what you think about?
Yeah, look, the cost of building software is going down significantly, right? And
I think
for sure that there's different what I would say is I would bet on our team's ability and our team's experience to just deliver this data set in different interfaces that people are interested in, right? So that number one, could you copy that potentially? But I continue to be a believer that it's going to be helpful for us because it's really hard to do this. Like it's not like this is like, I mean, you can go and try and vibe code this. Dude. Like it is a pain. I mean, anybody who's actually, listening or watching this and has done the matching work themselves, like, that is not something you just chuck into, an LLM over a weekend at, 10 o'clock at night. It is really, really hard work. And I think it's going to continue to be. We are playing with the AI stuff ourselves, trying to figure out, can we take some of this stuff that we do and move it into, but there's a lot of exceptions. And I mean, you guys know exceptions can cost you a lot of money.
Yeah, big time. I think your business has also been totally buoyed by AI, right? Because it just makes the cost of integrating with the API so low.
Right, it does. It's true.
You tell somebody a Claude subscription and an Optic Odds subscription, and you're on first base.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Can you talk about how you're thinking about that? You mentioned you've done an MCP, but is there more you can do? Because I think I've talked to venture capitalists who say a lot of what they're looking at now is people rebuilding existing businesses with almost like the same way that like SEO, like search engine optimization, was this big thing, right? Like, well, what if we just won on search? It's all of a sudden, what if we won on LLMs, right? If we can make it so Claude is always recommending our product or this workflow, like, do we just dominate? And is that a distribution strategy that you guys are thinking about?
We think about it a ton. Yeah. I mean, certainly on the consumer side, when people are really kind of dipping their toe into the water, I mean, you can go out there and test it right now. I'd be very curious if you want to understand, positive EV betting or plus EV betting, what content would come back. It's often OddsJam, and I think we've built that because we just have the expertise, right? So it's similar on Optic as well. I think we want to, the more interesting way or the more interesting thing that I think a lot about is the delivery mechanism for the needs of these customers as they evolve. How is that going to change? Right now, it's very much like, I plow into Opus 4.8 or whatever model gets pulled from you over the weekend, and I'm maybe trying to build a data model or edit my own data model with an MCP on my machine. So I think I'm paying a lot of attention to just the interface that people are using when it comes to our data and just talking to customers about it.
Yeah. Do you offer a free tier on Optic?
We've considered it, but we don't today.
Yeah.
But if you're a startup, you can get in touch and you can just basically say, hey, I really need this data. I'm building this, blah, blah, blah.
You guys are good about that. If somebody approaches and says, this is the use case, this is the scale.
It's like having like
started.
It's when we had OddsJam, it was like, we got to have a student package, right? These students, they can't pay $200 a month, right? So we need, people to be able to get in here.
So we see this problem a lot too in our industry. Like, we have no fees. Our two biggest competitors, Kalshi and Poly, have fees, yet they're doing more volume than we are because people aren't aware of price. They don't like, no. The average consumer, 99% of bettors don't think, oh, I want to go with this cheaper price. I want to pick one platform that is. I assume this is a problem for you guys as well, where it's like, there's no. What value does odds like? I'm just gonna pick winners. Like, why do I need like OddsJam? How do you see like educating the mass public, and do you ever see a shift where maybe 5 to 10 years that even your average Joe is aware that they should be getting the best price of things, or do you think that'll never happen?
Oh man, it's such a good question. I mean, when I ran product engineering at Action Network, this was back in 2018. We talked about price. It was like all we were focused on was showing people every single book and where they can get the best price on the Knicks spread or whatever, the Knicks total. And I would say that I am surprised now, sitting here 8 years later, how few people are price sensitive. And because a lot of times I'll go onto Kalshi, and I mean, the price is worse at the sports. I mean, on Kalshi than it is at the sports book.
Yeah.
And that's still difficult for people to compare. I ultimately think it's so hard to tell where this market's going to go in 2 years or 5 years. But I think, over time, I think the things that are going to stick out to people once they kind of can, maybe not necessarily like intentionally compare and contrast, but the ability when you're on these prediction markets to get action down at any moment, right? I mean, the like gray box of death during live games on a traditional sports book is like, it's just a beat experience, right? And the second you're on, any of these other ones, you can do it anytime, any second, swipe up.
That might be true, but I'll push back a little bit there. On like true stoppages where it's grayed out in the live, there's typically no liquidity on all these exchanges. I mean, when I say no, I mean very
smaller events.
Very little, yeah.
Yeah, fair.
Are you guys trading it all yourselves, or are you thinking about doing it?
We are. Yeah, it's on the table.
Yeah.
But we do not know.
Okay. How do you go about evaluating an opportunity like that?
That's obviously people come to us with the expectation that we're interested in this data and that there's no other benefit for us having this data, right? So we do use this data for OddsJam, we use it for Optic Odds as well, but ultimately we would have to find the right person and be transparent with our customers about if we were going to do that.
Yeah, I think that a number of businesses are in that spot where it's like we could do this, but
a lot of
we
businesses
have these existing SLAs and whatever, and yeah.
Oh, it's almost worse if you're in a business where you're selling to consumers.
Right. Public opinion,
your brand changes, and then people just attack you endlessly online, and we all know that people, the comment warriors don't go away.
Yeah. What's with these comment warriors, Chris?
I don't know.
I'm probably gonna get shit in the comments right now.
No. I think people will be pumped that you came on and talked to us.
Happy to.
Circling back to on how you started, why did Ankit and Alex pick you to be as an advisor? Do you have any betting experience and trading experience yourself? Like, what made you stick out, and what's your experience betting?
Well, back in 2019, I read The Logic of Sports Betting by Matthew Davidow.
Classic.
Amazing. Matt's a friend, and he's the man. And we were kind of in this position at Action where it was, there was a lot of capital being thrown into the business. We really didn't have, I think looking back, I certainly had the opportunity to build OddsJam then, but didn't. There was a lot going on. We were building, we were at the forefront building the live win probability stuff that you now get in Pickett. We kind of pioneered that stuff early back then. We did a little bit of the BetSync stuff as well, which were both great consumer experiences, but we kind of missed the top-down betting window with Action Network for sure. But that book always stuck with me. And Ankit had reached out. It was kind of like a random, must have been around September 2021. And I think he reached out just because of my background with product engineering at Action. And I never was a bottoms up bettor, but when I got the chance to sit down with Alex and Ankit and saw their vision and saw, the experience that came from SIG and what it was like one of those moments in like a movie where you're just like, oh my gosh, like there's going to be tens of thousands of consumers every single year who get absolutely waxed, who are going to be interested in learning and interested in this software. And so, yeah, I was able to learn that enough to get all of my accounts limited.
Sure.
But to me, the best way I can really bet in general is just through operating.
Got it.
Operating.
So you never really saw, like, you were always more like the product side. You never really saw yourself like making your own market making operation or scaling a whole betting operation that way.
Not a bottoms up one. I work with a few kind of these folks who are now building out their own and they're deploying other folks' capital. And so I'm finding the space very interesting about how they're playing it and some of the RFQs that they're doing. But yeah, no, that's my participation right now.
Then how did you get to Action Network?
Geez. So I was born. No, I'm just kidding.
Actually, no, but I think for a lot of people in this business, it's like you have to have grown up with it a little bit.
Yeah.
Right?
I loved sports growing up. I was the guy who was dating myself a little bit, but recording the making of Sports Center on VHS in my parents' house. I graduated. I got a job at ESPN, and I thought it was like, I was over the moon.
Yeah, right.
I got rejected, and I got grabbed off the scrap heap. And I came in there and I ran all the shit that nobody cared about. I'm talking about like StubHub ticket link integration, adding those links at the bottom of articles that nobody wants to read with all this scammy like whatever. Yeah. ESPN Radio, X Games, the revenue stuff. It was so funny. It was part of the revenue team, and I was like this guy on the side. Everyone else was building like cool shit like Gamecast. But yeah, then I worked at ESPN and eventually landed at a company called BAM Tech, where we built direct consumer streaming services, and that was. It was a darling of the 2010s. If you were streaming video back then, we sold to HBO Now, we did Hulu, we did PGA Tour, MLB, NHL, WWE. Like the list was, we did the World Cup. So it was a deep data infrastructure play, and then that was purchased by Disney. And so once I kind of was at Disney. I was like back. I was running ESPN Plus's launch. And I was like, well, I kind of felt like I had closed that chapter of my career on ESPN and wanted to do something different, and was fortunate enough to chat with the Churning Group guys. I actually I was talking about 3 different jobs. One was at The Athletic, one was at Barstool, and the other one was at Action Network. And I chose Action Network because of my product lean and my just desire to kind of build and touch the consumer. And it had the most white space of anything. Barstool was like already flying. It was obvious that was going to be a success. The Athletic was honestly already flying too. Shout out to Alex and Adam for building a beast there. And Action was maybe a smaller outcome, but I think a lot more fun. I mean, I joined prior to PASPA being repealed, so it was pretty cool.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
We often ask, what's the most expensive lesson you've learned in prediction markets? Now, I know you're not necessarily trading them, but
For
on
products.
the business side, you've probably had some expensive lessons, either an opportunity cost or otherwise. Is there one that jumps out to you?
I mean, I think we should have pivoted OddsJam sooner to being a prediction market company, and I think we're still very much in the middle of that.
I think a thing we often see with guests here and even among ourselves is we are on the rocket ship, but God, what if we got on the rocket ship 6 months sooner?
Yeah, I know.
How much more rich would we be?
Yeah.
I remember reading an article from a guy who he was in like IRC chat rooms with Satoshi back in 2008, and he says he might have been the first guy besides Satoshi to mine a Bitcoin, and his big regret is that he didn't mine way more. And I was like, wow, if literally the number 2 guy is like, I wasn't early enough, I guess just everybody on earth feels like they weren't early enough.
I mean, it's hard to see. It's hard to see with confidence. It really is.
Yeah. Well, I think it's good to keep perspective. It's like, you know what, I actually kind of was. Like, that's why I'm in the mix.
Yeah.
Where this is still a pretty early business.
It's very nascent.
Yeah.
I mean, I was listening to Risk Takers podcast the other week, and that
Great podcast.
yes, great podcast. And they talked about a year ago when I was on there doing an interview with them, and I was like, I don't know how prediction markets could do parlays, and now it's like, oh, it's solved. Like, I couldn't even see it, and it was just around the corner. So it's really, really hard to see these things, and that's how everyone is planning. Everyone wants to talk about RFQ.
Yeah.
Rufus said the same thing to me on Bet the Process, and I was like, we're going to figure it out, don't worry. And then I was like, you got to cut that. I can't sound like I know some trick to this. But yeah, that was about a year ago. Yeah. All right, Matt, it was awesome having you on, man.
Yeah,
I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. It's great being here. Thanks for having me, guys.
Of course. Thanks.